Have you ever met someone who constantly complains and somehow still wins at life? No, you haven't, because that person doesn't exist. You've seen the opposite though, haven't you? That guy who always has something to grumble about. The job's unfair, his luck is bad. People don't respect him, nothing ever goes his way. He talks like life owes him something, like every setback is a personal attack, like the world is supposed to bend just because he's tired. But here's the thing. He's always tired, always bitter, always stuck. Why? Because he's pouring all his energy into noise instead of progress. He's mistaking complaining for courage. He thinks speaking his frustration is the same as facing it. But it's not. It never was. You don't build anything by whining. You don't solve anything by venting. You don't grow by repeating the same story about why life's unfair. And yet, so many men get trapped here. Trapped in the illusion that talking about the problem is the same as doing something about it. But while they sit in the same complaints, life moves on. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule a plague-ridden empire by throwing pity parties. He led through storms, betrayal, and personal loss, not with noise, but with clarity. As he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not poetry. That's a blueprint. That's the difference between staying stuck and finally breaking through. In this video, we're going to dismantle the habit of complaining, brick by brick. You'll learn why it's not just a bad mindset, but a dangerous one. How it rewires your brain to expect failure, avoid action, and stay small. But more importantly, I'll show you what to do instead. How to trade ranting for reflection. How to shift from victimhood to vision. How to stop being ruled by your emotions and start using them as fuel. Because here's the brutal truth no one wants to say out loud. Nobody cares about your excuses. Not the world, not life, and definitely not your future. What it does care about is what you choose to do next. So if you're ready to stop bleeding energy into things that don't serve you, if you're done performing misery while secretly craving clarity, then this message is yours. Let's begin. Principle number 1. Complaining is not a strategy. It's emotional procrastination. Let's be honest, complaining feels good for about 5 seconds. It gives you a hit of self-righteousness, a temporary illusion of control. You vent about your boss, your ex, your bank account, your bad luck. And for a moment, you feel heard. But that moment fades, and you're still stuck. That's because complaining is not a strategy. It's emotional procrastination, a way to delay the real work by pretending your voice is action. It's like sitting in a burning house talking about how unfair the fire is, instead of grabbing a bucket and getting to work. And worst of all, it rewires your nervous system to find comfort in discomfort. You start to believe that talking about the problem is progress. You feed a cycle that goes like this: frustration, complaint, comfort, no change, more frustration. And around you go. But what you're really doing is trading your power for pity. Every complaint you let pass your lips is a small surrender, a quiet message to your subconscious that says, "This is too big for me. It's not my fault. There's nothing I can do." And the more you say it, the more your brain believes it. Neural pathways are not philosophical, they're mechanical. You train your brain every time you speak, and if all it hears is, "This sucks," it stops looking for solutions and starts looking for more reasons to stay stuck. This is how powerful men become paralyzed, not by failure, not by loss, but by repeating a story where they are always the victim. That's not stoicism, that's spiritual stagnation. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they didn't preach silence because they lacked emotions. They preached it because they understood energy. They knew, if you can speak, you can direct. If you can direct, you can build. But when you complain, you're not directing anything. You're dissolving. You're leaking vital energy through your words. You're programming your nervous system to collapse under pressure instead of sharpening under it. So what's the alternative? Pause, reflect, redirect. Instead of ranting, ask, what can I control right now? What needs to be done? What is this trying to teach me? Then do one small thing toward progress, not to prove something to the world, but to prove something to yourself. And no, it won't feel good right away. There's no dopamine hit. Just the quiet beginning of personal responsibility, the moment when you move from being a commentator to a commander. Because here's the truth. The world doesn't reward noise. It rewards clarity. It rewards action. So the next time you catch yourself about to unload a complaint, pause, breathe, and remember, every complaint you don't say is a brick laid in the fortress of your strength. You are not a victim. You are a builder. And builders don't complain. They construct something better. Principle number 2. Silent complaints are the most dangerous. You don't always hear the most destructive complaints because they're whispered, not to others, but to yourself. They hide behind your smile, behind the way you say, I'm fine. They live in the quiet moments driving to work, lying in bed staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. That's when they start speaking. It's not fair. Why does it always happen to me? I'm not good enough. They never notice what I do. I'll never get ahead. No shouting, no drama, just a steady leak. And like a dripping faucet, they wear away your inner foundation, one drop at a time. Silent complaints are the most dangerous because they feel like truth. They disguise themselves as observation. But they're not truth, they're repetition, conditioned beliefs, wrapped in emotion, masquerading as realism. And the longer you entertain them, the more they become your identity. You stop taking action. You start playing small. You turn your life into a self-fulfilling prophecy. You weren't broken by life. You were quietly convinced by your own voice that you already were. That's the real war. Not out there. In here. Because no level of external silence, no peaceful morning, no meditative practice can save you from a mind at war with itself. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus once said, "It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgment about those things." That includes the judgment you never say out loud. So what do? We train the voice. Like a soldier trains for battle. You must train your internal dialogue for discipline, for clarity, for truth. You don't silence the voice, you lead it. Start by catching it when you hear the phrase, "I can't," "It's too late," "They're better than me." Pause. Don't argue, don't panic. Observe it like a scientist. Then ask, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is this story from today or from a version of me I've already outgrown? What would a stronger version of me say right now? Next, rewrite the thought, not with fantasy, with framework. From, I'm not good enough, to, I'm not perfect yet, but I'm improving, and today I prove it. From, I always mess things up, to, every mistake is a rep in the gym of mastery. This is not toxic positivity. This is emotional self-defense. Because when you don't lead your inner voice, it gets hijacked by fear, by resentment, by past wounds that no longer serve your future. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. Your life is not shaped by what happens to you. It's shaped by the stories you keep telling yourself about what happened. If you keep telling yourself you're powerless, you will be. Not because it's true, but because you've rehearsed it so many times, your brain has made it real. So today you start the rewrite. Today, you become the narrator again. Catch the whispers, challenge the tone, change the script. Because the man who trains his thoughts trains his destiny. You can't complain your way into greatness, but you can reframe your way into power. Principle number 3. Triggers shape your complaint habit. Every time you explode at something small, every time a comment cuts too deep, every time you shut down over a delay or go silent after being ignored, it's not just them. It's something in you, and that something has a name. Trigger. A wound, unhealed, a fear unspoken, a pattern buried under years of pretending you were fine. That's what fuels the complaint, not the traffic, not your co-worker, not your partner's tone. It's the story that pain tells you again and again, and if you don't face it, you'll keep blaming life for hitting your buttons while refusing to admit you installed them. This is why so many men get stuck. They're not angry at the world. They're angry at the parts of themselves they've never healed. Stoic philosophy doesn't run from discomfort. It dissects it. It studies pain not as punishment, but as a teacher. As Musonius Rufus once said, "When you feel anger, jealousy, or sadness, don't look outward, look inward. Ask, what wound inside me just got touched?" That's the real work. The kind no one applauds. The kind you do alone, in silence, with nothing but honesty as your mirror. So let's get practical. Ask yourself, what situation makes you overreact again and again? What comment makes your chest tighten? What kind of people exhaust you the moment they enter the room? Now pause, don't blame them. Trace it. Maybe your trigger is rejection because you were only praised when you achieved something as a child. Maybe it's being ignored because your worth used to depend on being needed. Maybe it's control because chaos was your default environment growing up. Your trigger is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Because if you don't name it, you can't tame it. And if you don't understand it, you'll keep living through it instead of living beyond it. Here's what to do. Track the pattern. Identify one recurring complaint. When does it show up? What sets it off? Name the emotion behind it. Not just annoyed. Is it shame, abandonment, fear of being unseen? Trace the root. Ask, where have I felt this before? Go back. Find the origin. Don't flinch. Build the interrupt. A phrase, a breath, a movement, something that snaps you out of autopilot. Like, this isn't about them. This is old pain. I choose differently. This is how the Stoics trained not just their minds, but their reactions. Not with suppression, with awareness, with mastery. Because until you disarm the trigger, it owns you. It turns tiny annoyances into emotional landmines. It keeps you walking through life like a soldier on edge, not knowing when the next blast will come. But when you trace the trigger, when you rewrite the meaning, you don't just stop complaining, you start healing. And a man who's no longer ruled by his pain is finally free. Principle number 4. Pattern interrupts help you regain power. You don't rise when everything is easy, you rise when the storm hits and you choose not to drown. Let's be honest, by the time most men react, it's already too late. The words are out, the door is slammed, the damage is done. Why? Because they didn't see it coming, because they didn't train for the moment when emotion hits faster than thought. And that's exactly why you need this. A pattern interrupt. It's not some productivity hack, it's not spiritual fluff, it's a weapon. A trained response that breaks the automatic loop of emotional reactivity and returns your power back into your hands. When you feel the tension rising, when your chest tightens, your jaw locks, and your mind starts sprinting toward blame, escape, or explosion. That's the moment, the crossroads. And in that split second, you have two choices. Fall into the same old pattern, interrupt the pattern and reclaim yourself. Let's make this real. Picture a moment you're in traffic. A car cuts you off. Your first instinct? Shout, slam the horn. But you catch yourself. You say, calm but firm, your power phrase, "I don't give my peace to chaos." You inhale. 4 seconds, you hold. 4 seconds, you exhale. 4 seconds. Your nervous system recalibrates. Your grip loosens. Your vision clears. That's it. You just won a war that no one saw, but one that shapes the rest of your day, and eventually your life. So, what is a pattern interrupt? It's intentional disruption. It's something you choose when your old reaction is fighting to take over. And there are 3 tools to build it. 1. Power. Phrase. This isn't a quote to look cool. It's a command to your nervous system. Examples. We don't react, we respond. This moment is mine. Calm is my strength. I don't spiral here anymore. Choose one. Practice it. Make it hit like a fist to the chest. 2. Physical reset. The body is the fastest way to interrupt the mind. Walk out of the room, stretch your arms, drop down and do 10 push-ups, splash cold water on your face. Anything to break the state. Marcus Aurelius didn't meditate because it was trendy. He did it to reset, to see clearly, to not be ruled by the wave. 3. Conscious breath. Your breath is the remote control to your nervous system. Short, shallow breath equals panic. Deep, measured breath equals control. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Repeat. Do this, and your brain shifts from fight or flight into logic and clarity. Here's what happens when you master pattern interrupts. You stop snapping at people you love. You stop making decisions you regret. You stop letting outside chaos define your inner weather. Instead, you become unshakable, centered, dangerous, but disciplined. You become a man others look to when they fall apart. Not because you're emotionless, but because you've trained to own your emotion, not be owned by it. That's the Stoic edge. Not a denial of storms, but the ability to stand inside one, calm, focused, precise. So, next time the spiral begins, when the urge to yell, shut down, overreact shows up, interrupt it. Say your phrase, move your body, control your breath, don't fight the fire, just refuse to add fuel. Because the man who can pause can choose, and the man who can choose is already free. Principle number 5. Complaining affects your energy in relationships. You don't need to shout to drain a room. You don't need to slam doors to collapse trust. Sometimes all it takes is a sigh, a muttered complaint, a look that says, "This again?" Negativity doesn't need volume, it just needs presence. That's why complaining, especially the quiet, chronic kind, is like a slow leak in the walls of every relationship you touch. And if you're not careful, it won't just steal your peace, it will bankrupt your connection. Here's the truth, people don't remember what you say. They remember how they feel after being around you. And if every time you walk into a room, you carry stress like a weapon, tension like a perfume, or complaints like your daily small talk, you're not being real. You're being radioactive. Let's bring this home. Picture 2 men walking into a room. The first enters heavy. He doesn't speak much, but everything about him says, "I'm already fed up." People tread lightly, not out of respect, but out of fear. Now the second man walks in. He says little, but his presence, still, focused, solid. You feel grounded just by standing near him. That's the kind of man people trust, not because he's loud, because he's stable. And that stability, it's not born from perfection. It's born from discipline, especially emotional discipline. See, every time you complain, you leak uncertainty into your space. You force others to brace themselves around you. You shift the energy from creation to containment. People don't feel seen, they feel burdened. And the worst part? You might not even notice, because you've convinced yourself that you're just venting, that it's normal, that you're being honest. But here's the Stoic truth. Honesty without intention is just emotional pollution. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up each day and write about sunshine and praise. He wrote about betrayal, pain, war, exhaustion, and reminded himself to carry gratitude anyway. Why? Because a leader doesn't get to collapse into the same chaos he's trying to rise above. A man who complains becomes the storm he's supposed to weather. And your relationships, they're either lifted by your presence or slowly dismantled by your emotional inconsistency. Let's get specific. You come home stressed. You don't yell, but your silence is sharp. Your partner pulls back. Your kids stay quiet. The whole house feels heavier, and no one knows why. You sit with friends. They talk about their goals. You respond with sarcasm, eye rolls, must be nice. And just like that, you become the guy people stop dreaming around. That's the cost of unchecked complaint energy. But here's the pivot. The strongest men don't just resist complaining, they redirect energy. They bring clarity when others spiral. They hold presence when others panic. They become the emotional anchor without saying a word. And you don't need to fix the world to do this. You just need to own your atmosphere. Take responsibility for what you carry. If you're tired, say it with self-awareness, not self-pity. If you're struggling, speak it without leaking it. Because your energy, it's contagious, and you decide whether it infects or inspires. The man who learns to carry peace becomes a fortress for others, not because he fakes strength, but because he chooses not to collapse. So ask yourself, do people feel calmer after being with you? Or do they feel like they've just survived you? Be the one they trust in the storm, not the one they have to protect from the storm. That's not soft, that's stoic, that's leadership, and that's the man worth following. Principle number 6, focus on purposeful goals, not empty achievements. There's a reason your motivation fades, a reason the fire burns bright for a week, then dies out the moment things get inconvenient. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're chasing goals that don't mean anything to you. And when the goal has no weight, neither will your discipline. You can't fake purpose. Most men don't quit because they're lazy. They quit because they never knew why they started. The goal sounded impressive, looked good in a caption, maybe it even shut some people up for a while. But it was hollow, rooted in ego, pressure, or fear, not conviction. And what's hollow? Cracks under pressure. So the next time you catch yourself slipping, losing focus, spiraling back into old habits, pause. Ask yourself, why am I really doing this? Because if your answer is, to prove them wrong, because everyone else is doing it, because I don't want to fall behind, then brother, you're setting yourself up to fail. That's not a mission. That's a survival reflex. Let's break it down. You want to get fit? Good. But why? If it's just to post thirst traps or earn likes, you'll fold when soreness hits or life gets busy. But if it's because you want to respect the body that carries your future, that will carry you. You want to earn more money? Great. But why? If it's to flex or silence critics, the moment business slows, you'll panic and quit. But if it's because you want to create stability for your family or buy back your time, now you've got fuel. You want to build a brand, write a book, start a movement. Ask yourself, is this for applause or for alignment? Because applause fades, alignment compounds. This is where Stoicism strikes hard. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's not just poetic, it's a blueprint. Define your identity, then align your goals. Not to impress, not to prove, but to become. Because when the purpose is rooted in your values, setbacks don't shake you. You don't complain when it's hard, you expect it. Because the mission is bigger than your mood. And that changes everything. Suddenly, rejection becomes redirection. Failure becomes data. Delays become training. So how do you lock in purpose? Start with intention audits. Ask yourself, is this goal mine or borrowed? Does it align with who I want to be? Will I still want this if no one applauds me? And if the answer isn't clear, rework it. Go deeper. Get honest. Then turn that clarity into structure. Break it down into non-negotiables, track effort, not just outcome. Reward consistency over dopamine hits. Because when the mission is real, momentum follows. This isn't a life hack. It's identity engineering. The Stoic doesn't chase to be seen. He moves to become. He doesn't post progress to validate effort. He lives in silence until results make the noise. And when the storms come, and they will, he doesn't fold. He adjusts. Because a man on a mission doesn't have time to complain, he's too focused on building. So stop chasing goals you don't respect. Start choosing ones you'd suffer for. Because that's how peace is found. That's how power is earned. Not in applause, in alignment. Choose purpose. Or prepare to start over. Again. And again. Principle Sobai. Tukhan Bietonje Taikau Truksnobo. Let's get something straight. Gratitude isn't about singing Kumbaya in a circle or forcing fake smiles when life is punching you in the face. Real gratitude, the kind that Stoics understood and practiced, is not soft, it's tactical, it's sharp. It's what you reach for when the world starts spinning and your mind wants to spiral into negativity. Because here's the brutal truth. The human brain is not wired for peace by default. It's wired for survival. That means scanning for threats, remembering pain, anticipating loss. It's why you can receive 10 compliments and still obsess over one insult. It's not personal. It's biology. But what separates a reactive man from a resilient one is this. He doesn't let his biology run the show. He rewires it. Gratitude, when used correctly, is mental warfare. It trains your mind to spot strength instead of failure, direction instead of chaos, clarity instead of complaint. You don't practice it because life is perfect. You practice it because life is hard, and you're preparing your brain to face it without flinching. Marcus Aurelius didn't write in his journal every morning to feel good. He wrote to remember what mattered. Even as an emperor burdened with plague, betrayal, and war, he found something to anchor him. When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. That wasn't optimism. That was clarity. So how do you make this practical? Start here. Every day, write down 3 specific things you're grateful for, but don't stop at the what. Include the why. Don't just say, I'm grateful for my job. Say, I'm grateful I get to solve problems today. It reminds me that I'm not powerless. Don't just say, I'm grateful for my body. Say, I'm grateful I pushed through a workout when I wanted to quit, because that's discipline, and that's who I am. See the shift? Gratitude isn't vague, it's targeted, and the more specific it is, the more powerful it becomes. You're not just remembering what's good, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who sees through the fog. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Consistent gratitude practice lights up the brain's prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for focus, emotional control, and long-term thinking. Meanwhile, it tones down the amygdala, the brain's panic button. In simple terms, gratitude makes you calmer, smarter, harder to shake. And here's what most men miss. You don't wait for things to go right to feel grateful. You choose gratitude when things go wrong. That's when it matters. That's when it trains the warrior. Because when you're in pain, when the plans fall apart, when your goals are still far off and your body's tired, that's when the average man complains. But the Stoic? He pauses. He acknowledges what remains. And from that place of grounded strength, he moves forward. You see, gratitude isn't a retreat. It's a reset. It's what reminds you, I'm not out of the game. I still have breath. I still have choice. And I still have power. So the next time your mind drifts into scarcity, pause and ask, what is still working in my life that I've overlooked? What strength have I shown today that I'm not giving myself credit for? What lesson am I being given right now, and how will it make me stronger? Don't let the world decide your emotional climate. Set it yourself, with intention, with presence, with daily gratitude that isn't loud or performative, but quiet, personal, and absolutely bulletproof. Because when you practice real gratitude, you don't just feel better, you become better, and that's a man who doesn't complain. He builds. 8. Embrace challenges with a growth mindset. You don't get stronger by avoiding the storm, you get stronger by walking through it, step by step, breath by breath, with your eyes wide open. That's the difference between a man who bends and a man who breaks. Between someone who complains about the weight and someone who uses it to build unshakable strength. You see, most men see obstacles as punishment. They ask, why me? They say, it's not fair. They tell themselves the story that if something is hard, it must be wrong. That life is supposed to be smooth, and pain is a sign to stop. But not the Stoic, not the man with a growth mindset. He doesn't ask, why me? He asks, what is this here to teach me? He doesn't see the wall as the end of the road. He sees it as a chance to climb. Because he knows every challenge is a test, and your response is your resume. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote it best. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't talking about feel-good slogans. He was talking about facing plague, betrayal, death, and showing up anyway. Because the challenge wasn't his enemy, it was the path to becoming who he was meant to be. This mindset, it's not fantasy. It's not theory. It's a weapon. And you need it. Because if you're living a real life, trying to build something meaningful, to grow, to lead, to protect, then you'll be tested by failure, by betrayal, by fatigue, by doubt, by loss. And in those moments you have a choice. You can collapse into complaint and blame, or you can rise into growth. Let's make this real. Lost your job? Most men panic. The Stoic pivots. He builds skills. He tightens his discipline. He reframes the pain into progress. Got rejected? Most men spiral. The Stoic reflects. He asks, what did this reveal about me? Where do I need to evolve? Facing chaos at home? Most men withdraw or explode. The Stoic breathes, listens, leads with steadiness, not emotion. Because here's the secret. Adversity doesn't build character. It reveals it. And once it reveals the cracks, the man with a growth mindset repairs them, brick by brick. That's what separates men who rise from those who rot. They don't beg for comfort. They train for the fight. So how do you adopt this mindset? Start with the reframing habit. Every time something goes wrong, say, good. Training. Didn't get the result you wanted? Good. Training in patience. Missed a deadline? Good. Training in discipline. Felt overwhelmed? Good. Training in composure. Because when you start to associate difficulty with development, you become dangerous in the best way. You become a man who doesn't need things to go his way, because he's already wired to grow no matter what comes. You stop running from hard days, you lean into them. You stop flinching when things fall apart. You focus harder. And when people around you panic, you stay grounded. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've trained yourself to think, this is where I rise, this is where I become more. That's what a growth mindset is, not optimism, not toxic positivity. It's a decision. I will not be defined by what happens. I will be defined by how I rise. So ask yourself right now, what challenge are you facing that you've been labeling as unfair? How would your life change if you stopped resisting it and started using it? That shift. That's the difference between a man who reacts and a man who rebuilds. Let's be honest. You're not broken, you're not a failure, you're not beyond saving, you're just distracted, drained, derailed by habits of complaint, of avoidance, of silence when you should be acting. The problem isn't your strength, it's where you've been spending it. Because here's the truth that no one tells you: energy doesn't vanish. It migrates. It migrates into arguments that lead nowhere, into silent bitterness that poisons your thoughts, into people who give nothing back, into triggers you've never stopped to examine, into complaints disguised as conversation, when what you really needed was clarity and command. And now you know better. The Stoics didn't live perfect lives. They lived powerful ones, because they stopped expecting the world to hand them peace and started creating it from the inside out. They didn't beg to be understood. They didn't scream to be heard. They mastered the space between stimulus and response. That space is where your life changes, because the strongest men don't always roar. They often just pause, breathe, and choose differently. And that choice is yours now. You can choose to stop leaking energy into people who drain you. You can choose to guard your attention like it's the throne it is. You can choose silence over explanation, focus over approval, clarity over chaos. You can reset every morning with fire in your chest, not fear. You can give your best energy to people who pour it back. You can stop waiting for someone to fix you and start fixing your focus. But make no mistake, this isn't passive. It's war. A quiet war. A daily war. The kind no one sees but everyone around you feels when you've won it. Because when a man reclaims his mind, when he stops complaining and starts commanding, when he turns gratitude into a strategy and pain into power, he becomes someone no storm can move. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Discipline is not about forcing your life to be perfect. It's about holding your ground when it's not. You don't need a perfect path. You just need a powerful decision made again and again until your life reflects it. You don't rise once. You rise every morning. You rise every time you're tempted to collapse. And you don't. That's stoicism. That's your next step. And now it's on you. If this message hit you, don't just move on. Take a moment. Drop a comment. I choose command, not complaint. Hit like if this gave you strength. Subscribe if you're ready to build your mind like a fortress. And share this with a friend who's stuck in the spiral, because they need to hear what you just did. It's time to rise. Let's walk it together.